Get back to Neil.
Thanks, Bethany. There was a moment worth remembering last week, one for the big book of history. It was a matter of a few minutes' duration in the House of Commons when Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire, Andrew Bridgen, spoke about harms caused by the products marketed as COVID vaccines and called for their complete suspension because of, and I quote, clear and robust data of significant harms and little ongoing benefit. He referred to peer-reviewed research by cardiologist Dr. Aseem Malhotra, who has described the rollout of the BioNTech Pfizer product as, quote, perhaps the greatest miscarriage of medical science, attack on democracy, damage to population health and erosion of trust in medicine that we will witness in our lifetime. Strong stuff indeed. As I say, it was quite a moment. He said a great deal about 500,000 yellow card reports of adverse effects, about a journalist from a major news outlet who told him about being bombarded with calls from people hurt by the jabs, how that journalist thought it the biggest scandal in medical history in this country, but feared that if he were to say as much in his newsroom, he would lose his job. He spoke about how reanalysis of Pfizer's own data, published in peer-reviewed journal Vaccine, showed one serious adverse effect for every 800 jabs given, about how other medical products have been completely withdrawn after far lower incidence of harm. He mentioned the withdrawal of the swine flu jab in 1976 after Guillain-Barré syndrome was caused by it in just 1 in every 100,000, and the rotavirus jab taken off the market after causing a form of bowel obstruction in 1 in every 10,000 children. He said the benefits of the vaccine were close to non-existent. He talked about members of the JCVI having huge financial links to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, running into billions of pounds. He quoted the former editor of the BMJ, Richard Smith, who said in 2016 that medical research misconduct was rife. Quote, something is rotten in British medicine and has been for a long time, he said. He quoted Richard Houghton, editor-in-chief of The Lancet, who said in 2015, quote, science has taken a turn towards darkness. Bridgen concluded, we have already sacrificed far too many of our citizens on the altar of ignorance and unfettered corporate greed. Mr. Bridgen's statement was memorable. What made it feel like history in the making, though, lay in the response by Maria Caulfield, Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Department of Health and Social Care. She didn't speak for as long, but her words were every bit as unequivocal. There is no doubt in my mind that the thing that made the biggest difference in combating COVID was the introduction of the vaccine, she said. It's important to put on the record that all the vaccines used in the UK are safe, she said. I completely debunk the conspiracy theories about a whole group of people benefiting financially from the rollout of the vaccine, she said. It seems reasonable to me to say that it's not possible that the two entirely different realities described last week in the House of Commons by Bridgen and Caulfield respectively can both exist at the same time in an honest and rational universe. What was exposed in that chamber was not a difference of opinion, but two mutually exclusive worldviews. In short, one of them has got it badly, badly wrong. Since they were each in their turn describing decisions and policies relating to the lives and deaths of billions of people, the stakes could hardly be higher. I say again, one of them has got it badly, badly wrong. It's the same story on the other side of the Atlantic. Last week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced his plan to set up a statewide grand jury to investigate any wrongdoing regarding the rollout of the so-called vaccines. Chief Medical Advisor to the President, Dr. Anthony Fauci, then responded to the DeSantis statement saying, I don't have a clue what he's asking for. We have a vaccine that unequivocally is highly effective and safe and has saved literally millions of lives. Again, as is the case here in the UK, one of them has got it badly, badly wrong. What I have been wondering for a while, though, and which was neatly illustrated by those exchanges in Parliament and in the US, is whether the stakes are actually so high regarding what was done during the past 2 years that there's an intention to deny the people the truth for many years to come. I wonder, in fact, if what has happened in the name of COVID-19, the vast scale of it all, the necessary consequences in the event of Bridgen's side of the argument being proved correct, drives an attempt to encase the COVID event with an impenetrable denial until every last person involved is dead. What is being alleged about the so-called vaccines is of monumental importance. What Bridgen and Malhotra have claimed ought to be the biggest story in the country, in the world, and yet anyone interested in familiarising themselves with most of what was said has to go looking for it online. Bridgen noted withdrawals of those other medical products when their safety was credibly questioned. That's the world I thought we lived in, where doubt voiced in the face of credible research leads to the pausing of a course of action and a rethink. And yet here we are, with peer-reviewed research demonstrating 1 in every 100 people receiving the Pfizer jab suffers a serious reaction, and medical professionals of unimpeachable credentials urging at least a pause in the rollout, if not a full and final stop. And still, the government-sponsored adverts are everywhere, in the mainstream and online, inviting people of all ages to take even more of the same product. Dr. Malhotra said on this channel last week, in relation to the Pfizer jab, quote, "The original trial data, which was reanalysed, suggested one was more likely to get serious adverse effects from the vaccine than one was to be hospitalised with COVID." What does that mean? It means if that is correct, which it seems to be, it should never have been approved in the first place. Questions have been asked all over the world about blood clotting and any possible connection with the AstraZeneca product. Countries across Europe have stopped using it, and it's no longer being given to people under 30 in the UK. It's worth noting that on Wednesday, Pascal Soriot, Chief Executive Officer of AstraZeneca, was knighted by King Charles for services to life sciences in a ceremony at Windsor Castle. All around the world, there is mounting evidence of deaths and injuries caused by the so-called vaccines. There are more and more excess deaths, people of all ages dying every day, deaths unrelated to COVID. Pause for a moment to consider the following. In the United States, in the second half of 2021, 61,000 Americans between the ages of 25 and 44 died of causes unrelated to COVID. The death toll of the same age group during the decade-long Vietnam War was 58,000. Here in the UK, at the start of the lockdown in 2020, in the week ending 23rd of March, there were 1,379 excess deaths. In the week ending 21st October this year, the figure was 1,822. There are more people dying every week now of causes unrelated to COVID than at the height of the pandemic. Daily we were invited to look on in horror at the COVID death toll. Where is the outrage about these latest deaths? The round-the-clock coverage. Dr. John Campbell, a regular contributor to this channel, said last month in relation to the ONS data regarding those excess deaths, there is something pretty horrible going on. Over 1,800 deaths a week, more than we would expect, and it's been going on for a long time now, and we need an explanation. What we get instead is the relentless continuation of the rollout, the push to get boosted. Fauci in the US and others here in the UK say we're still in a pandemic. If that's true, it's the longest lasting pandemic in modern history, much longer than the Spanish flu pandemic at the end of the First World War. The concern being voiced now by Bridgen and Malhotra has been being shouted from the rooftops by many, many others for years. For as long as we've had the products marketed as vaccines, there have been voices asking questions, and those were silenced, derided, ridiculed, reputations ruined. Back in 1995, US physicist Carl Sagan demanded restless inquiry from all scientists. Science requires an almost complete openness to all ideas, he said. On the other hand, it requires the most rigorous and uncompromising scepticism. And so how did we get to where we are now? When did we set aside uncompromising scepticism and decide to live in a world in which we must, all of us, do precisely what we're told by our governments and their preferred experts without ever raising so much as a questioning voice? The chamber in which Bridgen made his speech was all but empty because, with a few exceptions, apparently none of the rest cared to listen to what he had to say about a course of action affecting tens of millions of lives here in the UK and billions around the world. Let's give the devil his due. Let's imagine many are daily in receipt of messages raising the alarm, but find their survival in the world of politics means they keep stoom rather than rock the boat. I hear from other journalists saying they're in contact with MPs, with medical professionals, with high-profile media types, all of whom have decided now to stay well clear of the so-called vaccines. Some of those people have taken some jabs, some none. But the fear of speaking out, the culture of silence in the face of what so many know to be an egregious wrong, is enabling the narrative to persist largely unchallenged. The behaviour of governments and corporations in the last 2 or 3 years has changed the world. It might still look the same, more or less, but in all the ways that matter, it has been altered. Those who are awake to it all perceive a new reality and wonder how on earth they missed the signs for as long as they did. That all but empty House of Commons said loud and clear that the powers that be, the allied powers of governments and corporations, no longer feel the need to be answerable in any meaningful way to the people. Paradoxically, their absence from the chamber only made them more glaringly visible. The willful blindness about the vaccines is just the tip of the iceberg, soaring excess deaths in all age groups, the complicated truth of the war in Ukraine still not openly discussed, the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the world, the wholesale erosion of our rights, the nudge away from cash and towards central bank digital currencies. People are freezing in their homes and turning to food banks in what has been a first world country. Here's the thing, the near emptiness of that chamber was a moment of history, a warning about the future. If our MPs don't care enough about harms to populations around the world to turn up and listen to one of their own, then it's time we reminded the whole damned lot of them that we are still here. They might have their hands over their eyes, but we can see them. They keep their mouths shut, but the silence is deafening.